Buzz. Arguing for the end of adult marijuana prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It is even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more in this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Welcome back, everyone. 23 after the hour in the data mines today. Some good news coming out of New York City, where there's been so much strife. And of course, as listeners to this show know, has been the world capital of marijuana arrests for years now. We are starting to see a decline in the number of arrests for simple marijuana possession in New York City. And a lot of this can be attributed to the work of Mayor Bill de Blasio and Commissioner Bill Bratton, working to reform the city's stop and frisk policies. Now, to understand how odd and tragic this title of world's marijuana arrest capital is for the Big Apple, you have to understand that New York State is one of the original decriminalization states. Back in the 70s, there were some 11 states that decrimmed. New York did so in 76 or 77, if I'm recalling correctly. And it made the simple possession of an ounce of marijuana or less a non-arrestable infraction. And so you'd think that would be the end of it. If you're caught with a joint or a small bag, why, you should just get a ticket and be on your way. But that's not the way it has been in New York City. In 1995, there were roughly 5,700 arrests for marijuana in New York City. We're talking about a city of 8 million people. By 2011, that number had grown to 50,700 or so. So we've gone increased by a factor of 10, largely an increase that happened during the Giuliani administration and his broken windows theory of policing. The idea that cops really need to rack up a lot of low-level violations for vandalism, graffiti, public urination, parking tickets, and so forth. And that would improve the quality of life and reduce crime by making a neighborhood more livable. Now, crime is down quite a bit in New York City and all across America. It's not the broken windows theory that is to justify this, though. There are much better explanations as to why crime is down that have to do with the economy and, believe it or not, the accessibility to legal abortion. But let's not get off on a tangent here. The way that the marijuana arrests increased so dramatically in New York City had to do with this policy called stop and frisk, where the New York Police Department would round up Black or Latino youths largely in underprivileged neighborhoods and give them the pat down as allowed in a Terry stop. Terry is a case that determined that cops can pat you down without a warrant, without probable cause, just to make sure you don't have weapons or anything that could harm them or any sort of contraband. And what would happen is if the cops felt a pipe or weed in someone's pocket or smelled some weed, they would tell the person to take the weed out of the pocket, empty your pockets, empty your backpack. As soon as that marijuana came into public view, that became an arrestable misdemeanor. And that's what led to the arrests increasing to over 50,000 by 2011. The good news we have now is that year after year, the arrests have dropped. In 2013, there was a total of about 29,000. And in 2014, down to 26,400, a drop of about 9% from the prior year. And a large part of that drop has to do with the 2-month drops in the last couple of months of 2014 as de Blasio and Bratton really ramped up this end to the stop and frisk policy. In 2013, December, there were 1,820 arrests. By 2014, it was down to 460 arrests for the entire month, a decline of 75%. In November 2013, there were 2,200 arrests. By 2014, that had declined to 1,280. That's a decline of 42%. Now, the much larger decline in December, that decline of 75%, is probably affected by the slowdown protests that have been going on, where the NYPD are purposefully not enforcing low-level crimes. So that last couple of weeks, since about December 20th, when all of the Eric Garner protests and the NYPD turning their back, when that started, the arrests went down quite a bit. That probably had a large degree of effect there. We will see in the coming months if we continue to see a decline in low-level marijuana arrests, or if those arrests return in order to make up the money that they would normally be getting in the tickets. But the big change here is a change in treating these violations with summonses rather than arrests. And even in the case of the summons, those have declined as well. So it's not as if the pot arrests have all turned into tickets. The summons are down as well by about 10%. So this overall reduction in this stop and frisk violation of people's Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights is leading to an overall decline in harassment of law-abiding marijuana consumers, especially Black and Latino consumers who are much, much more disproportionately affected by these policies. The summons means then we're down to a $100 fine, and instead of a possible 3 months in jail and a criminal record. Now, arrests are still continuing. 26,400 is still a lot of arrests, but a lot of those have to do with actual public use arrests where they see someone smoking weed in public. It's not a perfect solution. We can have problems. For example, even getting a possession ticket can be something that leads to a person being deported, for example. But this is a good change, and it's a